My guest this week is Dr. Jennifer MacRitchie, who has a degree and a PhD in electronics with music from Glasgow University and is currently a UK Research and Innovation Future Leaders Fellow at the University of Sheffield. Jennifer, welcome to STEM with Mr. N.
Good afternoon, Stuart.
It's a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for giving up your time to be here. So I'm just going to get straight into the interview. What does your current role involve? What are you researching just now?
So I'm looking at how older adults might be part of music education or any type of musical activities. And that's so they can try and find new ways of maintaining cognitive, social, and emotional health as people age. Part of that is designing new musical instruments for people with dementia.
How did you get interested in STEM? You've mentioned there's music involved. So did music come before STEM, and where did the interest in STEM come from?
Well, I think from a young age, I really was interested in how things worked. So classes like physics really appealed to me because you could do experiments and test whether assumptions you had about a car rolling down a hill or a water bottle exploding into the sky, how that all worked. And I had a love of music from a young age as well, so I really liked to play the piano and the viola. And I don't think one came before the other. I think I was equally interested in both things. And when someone suggested that I might be able to put those two together, that's what really piqued my interest.
So has your STEM career then been focused particularly on ways that you can marry those two interests together of music and STEM, and looking for a way that you can just continue with those two connections throughout your STEM career?
Definitely, I see a lot of similarities as well between music and STEM. I think there is a tendency to think that you have to choose between the arts and science, whereas I think they're quite heavily interlinked. If you think about music, it's made up of sound waves, and we talk about how we communicate through those different sound waves and through other things as well. But that's not actually too far away from some concepts in engineering and communication and thinking about waves there. So there's a lot of crossover. And then I think also engineering can be thought of as ways to create a solution to a problem, where, music and the arts are very creative in themselves. So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot more that links them than separates them.
So you said at the start that you're looking at the effects that music can have on not just mental well-being, but general cognitive well-being and the physical well-being of people. Can you expand a bit more on that? What sort of impact do you see music does have on a person as a holistic whole being?
I think music's one of these unique activities that marries a lot of skills together. So if you think about playing a musical instrument, you might have to read a score in front of you, and your brain is working hard to translate those symbols into actions for your hands to perform. And whether that be you hitting a key on a piano or strumming a string on a guitar. And then once you're doing that, your brain's really quickly trying to figure out if that sound is what you planned it to be. And if not, then you're adjusting your program and trying to play a different thing. That's just for playing a sequence of notes. Never mind thinking what that sequence of notes might evoke emotionally. So a certain piece of music might have tags to your past, something that you did, a day you had out with your friends or family, or a song that has meaning to you. And being able to play and share that with other people is a very emotional thing. It's also a very sociable thing. So you're then making those kind of connections with other people and communicating with them without the need necessarily for words. So I think music itself is quite multimodal. It has a number of different ways that we can use it. And so that's why they look at it as quite a promising they call it a non-pharmacological intervention. So it means just it's one of these interventions that we can look at that don't involve drugs or any certain kind of things that might have a negative side effect from a medical point of view. And so we are looking at how we might use that for older adults in terms of when we're getting older, and we're trying to think about ways that we might stave off cognitive declines, including those that come with dementia, then picking up a musical instrument might be a good idea. And that's some of the work that we're doing, is actually assessing whether that happens and how strongly that happens in different contexts.
It's great to hear there about, I always thought of music more as a community well-being sort of thing, because I am a musician. I played in bands growing up, played in wind bands, played in an orchestra, played in rock bands. And to me, the well-being always felt to me like a community, but it's great to hear that there's a lot of the cognitive side going on. Do you need, in your research, do you need both aspects together for the well-being, or would an individual playing music in their own house get the same benefits as somebody maybe playing as part of a group or being involved in part of a choir?
That sounds like a great idea for a research project to compare all of those. But what I can tell you is that I think what's important to know is doing an activity, like a cognitively taxing activity like that you will find enjoyment from, seems to be what causes the benefit. So you might see similar things across learning new languages or doing other types of brain training types of activity like crosswords, Sudokus, that kind of thing. So really the important thing is having the motivation to do it and getting some enjoyment from it. And then that happens to build a lot of other cognitive skills as well. But certainly for something that you can share with others and that has that emotional connection as well, appears to be quite strong.
Okay. It's very interesting to hear how it all comes together, especially, as I say, as a musician. This is right up my alley, getting to hear about how all this works together. But also, as a musician, I'm quite stuck in my ways of, there are these certain instruments that people have and people play. But you said that part of your research is designing instruments to help stave off dementia or help people with dementia. How do you go about designing a new instrument? Do you take something that exists and change it, or do you go right to the drawing board and start from scratch?
I think you can do it both ways, and really it depends on the people that you're designing for and with, I would say. So part of my research isn't just designing a new instrument for people with dementia, but it's working with people with dementia to figure out what it is they want to do, what kind of experience they've had in the past. So for one person that I'm thinking of, they'd played piano a lot of the time during their younger life, and they really wanted something that looked like a piano that they could play again, even though they had quite severe arthritis and so weren't really able to play the keys like they were before. So in that case, you take something that is quite well known, so it looks like a piano, it behaves like a piano in that it has a piano sound, but perhaps the way that you're interacting with a screen or particular buttons is going to change, so that then it's more meeting the person where their capabilities lie. But you could do something completely different. So there's actually quite a community of people who make new electronic instruments. And that could be anything from an iPad Surface. It can be anything from, there's one that looks like a cube that has squishy buttons all over it and it makes noises. So really the world is your oyster if you want to create a new musical instrument. You just have to decide what are the types of things that you want it to do, how you want it to feel, how you want it to interact with the person, etc. So we do both ways.
Okay. And I'd said in the introduction that you've got a degree in electronics with music and a PhD in electronics with music, but now you're working with people with dementia, and you'd also mentioned there, for example, somebody with arthritis. So how much do you connect with other specialties to influence your research and partner and marry up with what it is that you do?
Every day. And this is what I really like about academic research, is that you have your kind of expertise that you bring to the table, but when you get the really great ideas, it's because you're working with people across different disciplines that have different ideas. So quite regularly I'll work with people who are psychologists, I'll work with people who are in social care, in nursing, in music therapy, those kind of disciplines, as well as other engineers and computer scientists, to try and bring those interfaces together.
And do you also take that opportunity to learn from them, or is it more just picking their expertise and getting their direct input, or do you like to learn bits from them as well?
I love to learn what everybody else does and what kind of approaches and theories they have, because I really feel that that builds then on my research all the time. So yeah, I'm always learning. As I say, the joke is that I've been to university and I've never left. So every day is a school day for me, but I like learning new things and I like being able to make better research and better interfaces out of that.
That's really great to hear, because I've found, as somebody without a science background, that every time I go to do something else in STEM, I'm always learning, and there's that sort of lifelong learning progression. And whenever I speak to anybody that works in STEM, they all say the exact same thing as you, that it's about that constant learning. With all these connections with other people, have you ever thought, I wish I'd actually gone and done studies in biology or engineering? Have you ever thought, maybe I've gone down the wrong route?
I've never thought of going down the wrong route. I just wish I could have done multiple degrees at the same time, maybe. So one thing that I had a fascination with, so I did engineering and I did music, so I was really interested in, as I say, how things work, and I was interested in the music part of it. But the missing link there for me was how humans behave and communicate with each other, and that's where the psychology kind of entered in there. So I ended up going to work in an interdisciplinary research institute in Australia called the Marks Institute for Brain Behaviour and Development. And there I learned a lot from my colleagues on how we might examine behaviour, how we might measure it, how we design experiments to get those answers. So I think being able to put those three things together was really great. But obviously, yes, I don't have a psychology degree, but I do work with creating experiments that do sit in music psychology.
Hearing there how the different aspects of STEM all connect is a good lead-in to my next question, which is, there will be children and young people out there who are interested in STEM, and they might be interested in multiple areas of STEM. Have you got any advice for children and young people who want to pursue STEM and look to it as a career, about how they can continue their progression and interest in this area?
I mean, that's a big question, but I guess from my experience, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was at school, or even when I left school and initially went to university. And so I tried to make the decisions on what lit that fire in my brain, if you know what I'm getting at. So I really liked that engineering part. I didn't want to leave the music behind. You know, sometimes you'll get a kind of, oh, well, which one's your career and which one's your hobby? And maybe you don't need to choose. And maybe the careers that you're thinking of haven't been invented yet. So research is a great path for really kind of carving out what you want to do and being able to marry up quite a few of those different things. So I'd say, if you haven't made your mind up and you don't know what your end point is, don't be afraid.
And pursue your interests is what I took from that as well, and see where it leads, because there will be a lot of STEM careers that didn't exist when we were younger, that exist now, and that might not exist now for when the children and young people just now are older, or they might even be pioneers going forward.
Exactly.
So on that note of you not knowing where you were going and talking there about people pioneering going forwards, as you were growing up, did you have any STEM heroes, whether they were really famous STEM people or just people around you? Was there anybody that you looked up to?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because I'm not sure there's any particular STEM heroes that I was thinking of at the time, but I was quite inspired by people like Hedy Lamarr. So you have an American actress who, at the height of her fame, is also devising one of these elements, frequency hopping, that ended up being a precursor to modern communications technology like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Or you have somebody like Amelia Earhart, who's the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean on her own. These types of people, you know, they're kind of looking for new answers. They're imagining the future.
the two people you mentioned there, Hedy Lamarr and Amelia Earhart, are both females. How important is it just now to try and get more girls and young women involved in STEM?
It's really important. I think you see a bunch of paths in front of you, depending on who you can see in those paths already. So I think we really need to make visible female figures who are involved in STEM and associated subjects, because it's one of those things where it's not just a boys thing. It's something that we can get very passionate about and we can make great strides in. So yeah.
That was a great point, Jennifer, about how it's important to see people who are similar to you in front of you to know where those pathways are. And that's why I think it's been really valuable to have you on as a woman working in STEM, to be able to show that to not just the girls and young people out there, but everybody out there, because your background in music is tied into your STEM career, and also you are at the forefront of the research, which is good for girls to see. So I really appreciate you coming on the channel for this interview and giving your insights into your research. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart, for inviting me.